You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Welcome to the Hot Options Report, your premier source for insight into the fast-moving options market. Each day, we'll track down the products that are dominating the options chains and impacting your trading account. From Apple to VIX and everything in between, if it's lighting up the options tape, then you'll find it on the Hot Options Report. If you're listening to this show, chances are you're pretty serious about options trading. So let me put something on your radar. Public. It's the most cost-effective way to trade options. That's because Public is the only platform that gives you rebates on your options trades. They also have some of the industry's lowest index options fees. Whether you're placing single leg or complex multi-leg trades, every dollar counts. Check out public.com/optionsbrief and discover the most cost-effective way to trade options. Paid for by Public Investing. Full disclosures in podcast description. And now, get ready to scan the tape for the most explosive options activity on the street. It's time for the Hot Options Report.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time for the Hot Options Report for Thursday, July 31st. Yes, the last day in July. Hard to believe. July already coming to an end. Remember, if you've been thinking about checking out the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Today is the last day to get your name in the hat to potentially win the July Pro Trading Crate. Then it all starts over again tomorrow. Check it out. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. All right, let's get down to business here on the Hot Options Report for Thursday, July 21st. Let's kick it off as we like to do in vol land today. Was today a spicy day on the vol front? It was about in line with expectations, which again, it was an interesting day, kind of a bit of a topsy-turvy day. We rallied, then we kind of sold off in the broad indexes, then we rallied again. We actually ended up seeing VIX close today up on the day, closing on the VIX cash at about a 16 3/4 out there today. So a pretty spicy day on the VIX closing front and a decently active day on the volume front. 690,000 contracts, which is almost exactly its ADV of 687. What was the hot option out there in VIX options today? Yeah, we covered this on the option blog earlier today. I was kind of hoping it would make it through to the hot options report today at the number one spot, and it did. 101,000 of the October 60 calls, listeners. It was kind of an interesting vertical going up out there in VIX today. It was the OCC 60 110 vertical. Going up again about 100,000 times today, listeners, for prices around, looks like 25, 26 cents out there today. So interesting stuff out there. You like that? October 60 110 vertical. Well, either way, the 60s were the hot option out there in VIX today. Moving on to SPY, a pretty spicy day on the SPY front. Again, a little bit of whipsaw action usually tends to drive some volume in SPY, and that's exactly what we saw today. 9 1/3 million contracts changing hands against an ADV of 7.6 million. So pretty action-packed out there. The hot option in SPY today, 279,000 of the 640 calls a very interesting strike considering that SPY went out just a tick north of 632 today. So unfortunately, you know what I'm going to say if you paid anything for those and you rode them into the close. Not exactly a winner for you, but the flip side, if you sold them for anything, then you're looking pretty good at the end of the day, even if you had to sweat a little bit intraday. Moving on out to the S. Was it a spicy day in the S? Same thing. Whipsaws tend to drive some flow in the S, and that's what we saw. 4.82 million contracts on the tape in the SPX. The ADV about 3.5 million, so a pretty active day out there. The hot option in the S today, 141,000 of the 6,350 puts going to the dark side today. And where did the S go out today, listeners? 63, 39, 39. A lot of 39s in the S today. So those puts actually looking pretty decent out there today. They had an average price of right around $4.70. So it seems like those were winner chicken dinners. Again, if you bought them and held them into the close. Let's keep rolling out to small caps. IWM was pretty active, over 1 million contracts already by the time we got to it on the option block today, and closing the day right around 1.8 million contracts. The ADV about 1.3 million, so nearly 500,000 more contracts changing hands in small caps than we expect. So a pretty active day out there. And lately it's been August and beyond downside. That's been lighting up the tape in small caps. Is that the case again today? The answer is yes. 114,000 of the September. So going out even farther, 209 puts. Interesting stuff, especially when you consider that small caps closing 219.39. A lot of 39s on our closing prices today out there. So 219.39 were small caps going out there today. And of course, those 209 puts not looking great today, but that's the nice thing about trading in September. You got a heck of a lot of time for those to pay off. Can we hit the 209 strike by September? Well, if today's trend continues, we can get there pretty soon. As we keep on rolling out to the Qs, was it a hot day in the Qs? The answer was yes. Of course, in the Qs, we had whipsaws. We also had some hot tech earnings. We talked about them on the hot options report yesterday. Microsoft and Meta lighting it up on the earnings front. That's also contributing to a lot of volume out here in the Qs today. 5.17 million contracts on the tape. It's been a little while since we've seen the Qs that active. The ADV, 3.6 million. So a fair amount of paper flowing through the Qs today. And with all that going on, what was the hot option? What took the number one spot in the Qs today? It was the 570 calls going up 160,000 times. And let's flip the script. Let's go positive. If you sold those for anything at all today, you went out happy camper. Qs closing right around 565 even today. So a wild day out there in the Qs as well. Speaking of wild, yesterday was a wild day on the earnings front. It made some of the trades we were talking about on the show almost immediately looking great, which is always fun. And they were pretty far out of the money calls of both Microsoft and Meta. Can we do it again today? Let's find out. Let's kick it off. Number 10, listeners. Again, earnings season driving a lot of this flow, which also makes it fun. Seeing a little bit of shakeup in our top 10. By the way, a very active day on the single name front. Cost you 641,000 contracts to break into the top 10. That's over 200,000 more than we've been seeing most days lately out here as we're heading into the traditionally quiet summer period here. And Hood taking the number 10 spot today. Again, 641,000 contracts. The hot option in good old Hood today, 36,000 of the 110 calls out there. Now, you know, Hood had earnings yesterday and giving up the ghost a little bit out there, closing right around 103. So the 110 calls expiring tomorrow don't seem like they're going to get the job done if you bought them. They traded for an average price of 85 cents, so they were not giving these away. On the flip side, if you sold them today, you're looking pretty good. Just got one more day to go. Can we stay below the 110 strike by tomorrow's close? Well, I guess you got to tune into the hot options report tomorrow to find out. As we keep on rolling to number 9, it's SoFi, 739,000 contracts. So we got some financials taking up the bottom part of our top 10 today. The hot option in SoFi today, this is interesting. We typically see naught but end of week options going up in our top 10. Today, we're going all the way out to December in SoFi. The D's 20 puts going up 40, almost 41,000 times. 20 put is not that far out of the money. Stock closing a little bit north of 22.5 today. So 20 puts by December. Can we get there? I tell you what, they weren't giving these away. Now you're buying some decent duration here, so that accounts for this price, but a little over $5 for these puts today, listeners. So again, if you're buying those, you got to get down to about 15 by December expiration for those bad boys to pay off. On the flip side, maybe you like that as a sale. You don't mind tying up some capital through the end of the year. You don't mind collecting $5 if the stock hangs out north of the 20 handle. Either way, an intriguing trade in SoFi. Don't see a lot of D's lighting up our top 10. Going out to number 8, UNH still managing to hold on to its spot in the top 10 out there, listeners. 770,000 contracts on the tape for UNH today. What was the hot option out there? 33,000 of the par puts, the 300 puts expiring tomorrow. This has kind of been continuing a trend out there. UNH kind of falling out of bed, continuing to fall out of bed today, closing a little bit shy of 250, right around 249.5. So the 300 puts are deeply in the money. So it's an interesting way to go. We've seen a lot of weird in the money put strikes going up in UNH of late. So some funky paper out there. Also some RevCons, I believe, going up yesterday out there. Either way, it was the 300 puts. Average price for these bad boys right around $49.5. So if it keeps falling out of bed and you paid for these things, I guess you're looking pretty good. Still an interesting and expensive way to get short if that was what was going on out here in United Health today. Either way, a wild day here for UNH at number 8. Some of the weirder paper we've been seeing in our top 10 coming in at UNH this past week. Number 7, AMD falling all the way to number 7. Is the bloom finally off the chip rose, listeners? This thing has been rally ho mode for pretty much the better part of the last week. It's up 8% over the past week and about 25% over the past month. So it's been a good run for AMD and other chip names. Today, giving some of that back, closing 176 and a third, off about 320 today, or nearly 2%. Still putting up nearly 1 million contracts, 908,000 contracts. So number 7, we're already threatening 1 million contracts. That is an active day, listeners. What was the hot option in AMD today? 110,000 of the 180s, again, expiring tomorrow. And this is all opening paper for prices around $2. So if you paid $2 for those, listeners, you need AMD to get the heck out of gear by tomorrow's close. Otherwise, you're going to be wearing it on those $2. Flip side, if you sold them and it stays below 182 tomorrow, you're looking pretty good on this trade. Keeping it going out to the fruit company. Apple, of course, reporting after the bell today, driving some pre-earnings paper out there. Let's see what was lighting it up out there in Apple today. A pretty active day, 1.07 million. Haven't seen Apple that active in a while. Again, that's what earnings tends to do for you. What was the hot option out there in Apple today? It was 40,000 of the 220 calls. Now, yesterday we were talking about wildly out of the money calls going up in Microsoft and Meta. I think in the case of Meta, they were $50 out of the money or somewhere in that range. They both ended up paying off almost instantaneously as soon as the news broke in the after hours. Those calls were pretty much in the money, and they opened in the money, which is the important part of that equation. Obviously, you can't trade options in the after hours. 220 seems like maybe it's a bit of a bridge too far, but we shall see. Apple closing right around 207.5 today, off about $1.50. So getting caught up in some of that drawdown towards the end of the session. But looks like in the after hours, folks liking the numbers right around 212. So up about $4 or in change in the after hours out there. That said, still a long way from 220. It had an average price of nearly $1, 95 cents. So if you paid 95 cents for those, might be hurting tomorrow. Now, if you sold them, I think you're still looking pretty good. And if you had stock against that, you don't mind letting your stock go at a price of close to 221 out there, I don't think. Either way, interesting. We'll see how Apple goes out tomorrow to see how those calls fare. As we keep on rolling to number 5, Microsoft. Talked about them yesterday. You knew we were going to talk about them again today. 1.11 million contracts on the tape for good old Softy. Just an incredibly hot day, hitting $4 trillion in market cap. Just wild time. Just when you think Microsoft and these other Mag 7 names can't milk any more money out of that magical set of letters known as AI, they continue to do so. Microsoft closing today, 533 half. Man, that is wild. Up $20 and a quarter, nearly 4%. Blew through the 550 level, got up to 555 earlier today, which I do believe the 550s were some of the calls we were talking about yesterday. Either way, today, the hot option in Microsoft was the 540s. The 540 calls going up 47,000 times, nearly 48,000 times out there today, listeners. So obviously, we blew through them earlier this morning. He's had an average price of about 3.25. So folks weren't messing around with these. Right now, those are not looking great if you paid for them. But on the flip side, if you sold them and you don't mind gritting your teeth for a little bit, you might work out there tomorrow. Speaking of yesterday, listeners, I'm going to look really quickly. What was the hot option in Microsoft? Yes, it was the 530s, actually, trading yesterday for 3.25. We thought that might have been kind of rich. And lo and behold, blew through that strike out there pretty easily in the after hours and indeed today during the trading session. So interesting stuff, even if we didn't close that far away from it. They paid about 3.25 average price for those 530s, and stock closed in 553.5 today. So might be sweating it a little bit tomorrow, but interesting stuff nonetheless. As we move on from Microsoft to Meta, the other M name dominating the Mag 7 in the earnings news yesterday. 1.25 million contracts on the tape in Meta. That's just a ridiculously active day for Meta out there. These Mag 7 names putting up index numbers at this point. The hot option in Meta today, 65, almost 66,000 of the pars, the 800 calls. That may sound pretty high, and it is. Closing today, 773.44, up 78.25 or 11.25%. Just when you think these names have, again, squeezed everything they can out of this, they pop another 11% or 78 handles. That is just absolutely wild out there. That said, the par strike trading for an average price of $2 today. They got a ways to go to hit that. Can they get there by tomorrow? Do you think they can? Would you rather be a buyer or a seller for $2 of those par calls, listeners? I guess we'll find out how they worked out tomorrow as we keep on rolling to number 3. Another name that is popping off as we speak. This is Amazon putting up 1.37 million contracts today. The hot option in Amazon today, nearly 50,000, 49,000 of the 235 calls. Interesting strike because Amazon went out a little bit shy of that, 234.11. In the after hours, though, by the way, those traded for an average price of 6.25, listeners. And if you bought those today, you might be regretting it right now. In the after hours, looks like the number not great out of Amazon, trading right around 228, pretty much even right now, off a little over $6 in the after hours. So apparently in the first blush, the market not liking the news out of Amazon. So if you paid 6.25 for those 235s, you might be wearing it tomorrow. We shall see. We'll come back tomorrow to check in on Amazon as we keep on going to number 2. Once again, it's Tesla, 2.17 million contracts on the tape. The hot option in Tesla today, 138,000 of the 320 calls, which is looking like a distant memory right now. Those traded for an average price of about $1.80. Tesla going out today right around 308.25, off 10.75 today. So can they get back to 320 by tomorrow's close? Seems like a tall order, but then again, it is Tesla. It can do literally anything seemingly intraday out there. And if you sold those for nearly $2, one more day ahead of you, listeners, and then you're looking pretty good. As we take the top spot yet again, it was a pretty active day out there, and yet Nvidia managing to hold on to its throne, put up some respectable numbers as well. 3.67 million contracts for Nvidia. And it was the 180 calls, again, talking about index numbers, 415,000 of the 180 calls. Makes sense. That is a very round psychological level. A lot of paper likes to gravitate towards. Nvidia closing shy of that today, 177.87. Those traded for an average price of about $1.65. So it seems like you got some work to do to make those pay off if you bought them tomorrow. Flip side, if you sold them and you can grin and bear it for one more day, you might be looking pretty good on those. And that's all she wrote for the hot options report for Thursday. Again, another wild one as earnings season continues to deliver surprises left, right, and center. Stay tuned for all of our content coming at you on the network tomorrow, including, of course, Volatility Views, where we look back on the week's worth of volatility action. And spoiler alert, there was a lot. We had the Fed, we have all sorts of action in the trade war, as well as earnings driving a lot of flow out there. And then after that, exclusively for our pro members, we come back for a little bit of Options Oddities action. It is Options Oddities 200 tomorrow. Gonna be a banger. Got a great special guest helping me hold court on all things unusual activity, and they always bring it when they come on the show, listeners. So look forward to some fun activity there. If you want to check that out, remember, the only place to get it, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then we're back again one final time for the week. to break down all this fun flow on another episode of the Hot Options Report. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Check out public.com/optionsbrief and discover the most cost-effective way to trade options. Paid for by Public Investing. Full disclosures in podcast description.